Breaking the inner script. You are not who they said you were. Welcome back to the Family Roles series Inside School of Soul. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author. And in this episode, we're going after the internal architecture, the invisible script that gets written for you inside narcissistic families. Because in families like this, you aren't raised to be yourself. You're raised to play a part. And if no one ever shows you how to exit the role, you end up confusing the script you were handed with the person you actually are. Let's be clear, the dysfunction wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came dressed as discipline, tradition, responsibility, or even love. But underneath it was always the same demand: stay useful, stay compliant, stay small. In this kind of home, identity isn't discovered, it's assigned. And most people don't realize they've been living out someone else's expectations until decades later, after burnout, breakdown, or betrayal forces them to ask, who am I when I'm not performing? When a child grows up in a narcissistic or control-based family system, they are often handed one of a few standard roles: the golden child, the scapegoat, the invisible one, the parentified helper. Each role serves the emotional economy of the family, but none of them reflect the child's actual soul. These roles aren't chosen, they are cast. They exist to keep the narcissist emotionally fed and the illusion of the normal family intact. Let's say you were the fixer. You became the responsible one, the emotionally available one, the go-between. You made peace during conflict, took care of siblings, and never asked for too much. That role was praised. But that praise wasn't love. It was reward for performance. Or maybe you were the scapegoat, the one who asked too many questions, the one who said what others were too afraid to name. And for that, you were punished, blamed, labeled difficult. That wasn't truth, it was containment. Or maybe you were the achiever, the golden child, the proof that the family was successful. You were praised as long as you were impressive. But the moment you expressed vulnerability or emotional needs, you were ignored, or worse, rejected. That wasn't admiration. That was objectification. These roles become scripts, behavioral templates that run beneath the surface well into adulthood. They affect how you show up in relationships, how you handle conflict, how you view rest, and how you relate to success. They show up in your friendships, in your career, in your parenting, and the tragedy is that most people think this is just who I am. But it's not who you are, it's who you became in order to stay safe. The self that was most natural to you, curious, sensitive, expressive, bold, got buried under the pressure to maintain the family structure. So what does it take to break the script? The first step is learning to separate your identity from your function. Just because you were rewarded for being the peacemaker doesn't mean you're here to sacrifice your needs. Just because you were blamed for the family's issues doesn't mean you were the problem. Just because your success was the family's currency doesn't mean your worth lives in your performance. You are not your coping mechanisms. You are not your role. You are not the version of you they trained to be useful. This leads to the next step: internal voice replacement. In narcissistic homes, your inner voice doesn't develop naturally. It gets overwritten. What you think is intuition is often programming. It's the voice of the critical parent, the disappointed sibling, the guilt of the system whispering, be careful. Don't upset them. Don't make it about you. Ask yourself, whose approval are you still chasing? Who do you feel the need to explain yourself to even when they're not in the room? Whose disappointment do you fear when you say no? Take a break or celebrate yourself. These are clues that your identity is still being shaped by the ghost of the script. Voice replacement means building a new inner authority, one that speaks from truth, not trauma. It means replacing "I'm selfish for resting" with "I deserve recovery." Replacing "I'm hard to love" with "I've been loving others from an empty tank." Replacing "I can't say no" with "boundaries are a sign of emotional maturity." This isn't positive thinking. This is deprogramming. And deprogramming doesn't happen in one moment, it happens through repetition. Every time you pause instead of people please, you're rewriting the script. Every time you say, "That's not mine to carry," you're returning a role. Every time you stop yourself from over-explaining, you're reinforcing freety. Another key piece of this process is learning how to rebuild self-worth beyond performance. In a narcissistic home, you are valued based on how much you contribute, how well you conform, or how good you make the family look. This creates a belief system that says, I am only worthy if I'm doing something for others. But real self-worth has nothing to do with output. It's not about being needed, it's about being known. It's about recognizing your value simply because you exist, because you are conscious, alive, aware, and in motion. You do not need to earn your place on this planet. You are not a machine. You are not a therapist. You are not a body on call for other people's needs. You are a person, with limits, with feelings, with an identity that is worthy even when you're sitting still. So how do you begin to reconnect to that self? You start by creating environments that reflect who you actually are, not who you were told to be. That might mean shifting your career. That might mean choosing new friendships. That might mean saying no to family obligations that exist solely to reinforce the old hierarchy. You also reclaim the right to rest. For many survivors, rest is not relaxing, it's triggering. You feel lazy, useless, exposed. Because in the old script, rest was punished. Only performers got love. Only self-sacrificers were safe. So now, even after you leave the house, your nervous system still associates stillness with danger. That's where nervous system retraining comes in. You don't just give yourself permission to rest, you teach your body that rest is safe. You breathe through the guilt. You speak truth out loud. You name the programming. You make rest a ritual. Not because you're tired, but because you're rewriting what it means to be human. The same applies to emotional expression. If you were taught to suppress your needs, then anger, grief, or even joy may feel threatening. The script taught you that big feelings were dangerous. But they're not. They're data. They're feedback. They're evidence that you are no longer a tool for someone else's comfort, but a free being with your own emotional landscape. Breaking the script also means releasing the need for validation from the people who assign the role. You don't need the narcissistic parent to understand. You don't need the enabling sibling to come around. You don't need the system to acknowledge what it did. Because you're no longer acting in their play. You're writing your own. And in your story, love isn't based on silence. Safety isn't based on submission. And identity isn't based on how well you serve someone else's dysfunction. You are not the fixer. You are not the forgiver. You are not the emotional regulator, the invisible one, or the problem child. You are the one who woke up. You are the one who stepped out of the script. You are the one who remembered that performance is not love and survival is not living. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start. The black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child, and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation and leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.